Hello, welcome to the Analyst Inside Cricket with me, Simon Hughes.
And I am Simon Mann.
And the big news of the day is on the 1st of December.
Drum roll.
Not that England have won by 8 wickets in Christchurch, but that I hit Santa for a straight 6. That's the highlight of my life the last couple of years, hitting Santa for a straight 6. Admittedly, it was a virtual Santa. And it was in a small enclave of a sort of artificial net in a shopping centre, but, still, they all count.
A, I didn't think Santa existed, so you actually just clarified that was a virtual Santa. And B, Oz, here's my next one. How many sixes did you hit in first-class cricket? Can you remember?
That's a good question.
You don't know the answer, do you?
I hit Keith Medlicott for a 6. I hit Dom Topley for a 6. Players that probably a lot of our listeners have never heard of. One played for Essex, one played for Surrey. I hit Beefy for 6.
Did
actually.
You? Come on,
yeah.
No, okay, right.
It was a short boundary. Now you think I'm dreaming, don't you?
No, you got to tell us the story. I thought you were going to say I hit Curtly Ambrose for 6 or Michael Marshall for 6, but actually,
sadly not.
Well, he hit Ian Botham for 6.
I actually hit Alan Donald for 6 as well.
Right, okay, right. Quickly, both stories then.
Well, Alan Donald, I hit for 6. There was a ridge at Edgbaston. I was in at night watchman. I went to parry the ball back towards him. The ball lifted off a length, flew off my glove, off the top of the handle of the bat, straight over the keeper's head for 6. So I can claim I sort of hooked Alan Donald for 6, even though I had no idea where the ball was. Actually, Beefy, I hit for 6 in a Sunday League game. He bowled me an absolutely rank half volley on my pads, and I flicked it, and it went for 6. Miraculous. I think the boundary at Taunton was about 37 yards. So, it was probably marginally only just a 4 on some other ground. And Beefy then returned the favour and hit my ball about 100 yards later in the game. So it was probably
into the river or into the graveyard?
No, it was just over the cider bar. Probably landed in someone's pint.
Okay, so you hit Santa for 6. So you went to sixes yesterday, presumably, did you?
Well, you've got to do that, haven't you? If you go to sixes,
you've got to hit a 6.
You've got to hit a 6. And Santa bowls these sort of crafty little leg breaks and googlies. It's a particular setting on the machine. And he comes up with all this kind of mysterious stuff. But to me now, it's easy. Just down the wicket, bang. Straight back over his head. Lovely. And then I was asked to play the ramp, and that was embarrassing. It hit me on the knee via my chin, went over my head. It looked really absolutely terrible. So I have to put the funky shots away.
I presume there's going to be some footage of that sometime.
There's going to be some footage on, if you look out on TikTok, or I'll put it on YouTube as well. Me and my Christmas jumper hitting Santa for 6. Shall we get on to the serious business here?
Yeah, but very well done, Yoz. Well done for hitting Santa for 6. That's fantastic. Good. But I'm quite impressed that you managed to hit Ian Botham for 6 and Alan Donald for 6, although it sounds like he almost hit you for 6, if you see what I mean by that.
That was actually, Alan Donald on that pitch at Edgbaston was terrifying. That's when I went into bat and the slips and wicketkeeper were outside the 30-yard circle because he was hitting the ridge and it was just taking off. And somehow the ball didn't kill me, and it went for 6 over the keeper's head. So it's in the scorebook, but I didn't know much about it, to be honest.
And look, it's Sunday afternoon. I presume we haven't got enough time to go through all the people that hit you for 6, are we? So we probably should move on, shouldn't we?
I think we should.
Right, okay. So there's an old adage, isn't there? 8 drop catches, 8 wicket defeat. It's like Red Sky at Night, Shepherd's Delight. 8 drop catches, 8 wicket defeat. And, well, that's one of the stories of the game, isn't it? New Zealand dropped so many catches, let England off the hook. England took advantage. And ultimately, they thrashed them, didn't they? It was a straightforward victory, middle of the afternoon, beautiful day at the Hagley Oval. Lots of people turned up to watch, but the England supporters who turned up were very happy with what they saw. But it was half a day's cricket. And ultimately, it was a pretty one-sided Test match, but England managed to dig themselves out of 2 difficult positions. One when New Zealand were 199 for 3 in their first innings, and the other when England was 71 for 4. New Zealand were culpable. They tossed wickets away. They dropped catches. We know that. It was the theme of the earlier part of the Test match. And actually, credit to England that they were ruthless enough to exploit that, weren't they? As the game, they took control of the game. They did not release that control of the game until they absolutely nailed it down and go 1-0 up in the series. Who should we start with in terms of, that's a summation of the game, who should we start with in terms of looking at some of the players? Perhaps we should probably start with Brydon Carse, shouldn't we? I mean, what a Test match he had. He scored some runs. He took a 10 for, first 10 for away from home since Ryan Sidebottom did it in 2008.
16
pace
years ago,
bowler,
yes.
pace
Yeah.
bowler,
Yeah.
first England bowler since Monty Panesar did it in Mumbai, a famous game when England won on a dust bowl turning pitch, and Alistair Cook and Kevin Peterson played superb innings, made hundreds in the game. Fantastic win, that one for England. And this was a pretty good one as well when you consider where the two teams were. But I just you get that thing. I mentioned it earlier in the match. You feel that the New Zealand conditions are quite well suited. The whole sort of feel of playing cricket in New Zealand is quite well suited to England and the way they play their cricket.
I spent a bit of time listening to Brydon Carse actually during the one-day series against Australia in the late summer. And he was obviously in that side, that England ODI side, and I sort of watched him quite carefully. And I did what I don't normally do. At the end of the match at Headingley, I went to the press conference, which Carse had been put up for, partly because I think he'd just been called up or he was about to be called up for England in Pakistan, or there was a rumour that he was going to get called up. So he was put up to talk to the press, even though actually in that match at Headingley he'd gone for quite a few runs. And I thought he talked very positively and kind of honestly about his ambitions. And he said, everyone was talking about the one-day side and his value to it. And he said, look, I love playing this one-day cricket, but my real ambition is to play play tests. I want to play for England in test cricket. And I feel I've got something to offer. And I'm going to focus all out on doing absolutely my best for England in test cricket and proving that I've got a value. And obviously we didn't know really what that value was. I mean, maybe Ben Stokes did. Maybe because he'd seen him at Durham a lot, he sort of suspected. And it's what they're looking for, England, aren't they? Is obviously talent, but they're looking for attitude as well. They're looking for players who are fearless, who are committed, have something different maybe, who are sort of have an ambition that is sort of sky high, And it sounds obvious to say that, but a lot of professional cricketers aren't like that. A lot of professional cricketers are sort of quite self-satisfied with their levels. And I'm not going to name names, but there's plenty of players out there who are kind of coasting along, doing quite well, very well in county cricket, but they almost don't want to be exposed at a higher level. They're sort of happy with their lot. And that's always been the case. And I think that's one of the reasons why England under Stokes and McCullum want to pitch these players in, sometimes when they're very young, who haven't had much experience, because I think they feel that county cricket can almost drain away your ambition. You become quite comfortable and almost a bit complacent. You've got a nice life. You're playing for your county or coasting a bit.
And was it like that when you were playing yours?
Absolutely. I mean, it's always been like that. I mean, profession is a dirty word. I know it can be seen as a dirty word. I mean, Ed Smith, actually, I remember writing a column about this some years ago, how professionalism can actually be a deterrent to improving because you feel like you've arrived and you've made it and that's it. But actually, county cricket I think, can eat away and chip away at your desire, your ambition, your passion. And it becomes a job. It becomes a bit routine. So at times, I think they've almost tried to drag players out of that potential, sort of, I don't know, kind of eking away at a player's resolve or desire, because they feel county cricket can actually undermine your natural talent and your ambition, and dragging them out and putting them straight in international cricket, as they've done with Bashir and a few others over the last few years. It's sort of almost saving them from what they think might be the negative impact of county cricket. And I mean, obviously Stokes has seen with Carse there is something there, and he's proved it, hasn't he? And by in different sorts of circumstances, in different ways. When he's got six slips and with the new ball, he's been able to hit a good line and length at a good pace and really probe away at a batsman's technique. If it's a dry, hard pitch with the older ball, he's shown he can do reverse swing and aim at the stumps. And he's also been able to be the battering ram that tries the leg theory. So he's got several different guises, which have all been clearly very useful assets.
Yeah, well, he's aggressive, isn't he? He's strong. He seems fit. He can bowl quickly, and that helps as well. He can do the job that England want him to do, which is to bang it in, and he can also bat and he can field as well. So he's a good all-round package. I think there are a lot of people who probably doubted whether he could pull it off, and it's very early days in his career. Of course, you've got to stay fit and keep performing. But early signs were encouraging. I watched him bowl on those pitches in Pakistan that didn't have much in it for him, and he kept on running in, and he was actually quite unlucky at times, and people were dropping catches. His figures would have been better. So yeah, there's definitely promise there, isn't it? I mean, I think we mentioned this before. The only slight sort of drawback is he's actually already 29, isn't he? So he's quite old in a way to be pitched in as a bowler in Test match cricket.
Yes, I mean,
generally in Test match cricket.
That's true, but I mean, look at Pat Cummins, who started when he was very young and had an incredible first Test, and then he was injured for about 7 years. Cummins has now, over the last 3 or 4 years, really hit his straps and
stayed on the field, hasn't he?
Stayed on the field, looked incredibly. I think you understand your body better when you're in your late 20s and your action. You understand your action as well and what you can do and can't do and how to adapt to different situations. Whereas when you're young, you're just sort of having a shot at it, a shot in the dark almost, and actually knowing how to prepare, knowing how to get your body ready for the demands of 4 or 5 day cricket is something that you do only learn over time. So I don't think that 28, 29 is a bad age to be coming through in Test cricket. Obviously, it's better if you're 25, but I don't think you really know yourself as a bowler till your late 20s, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the only point I'm making there is that he's got less time, hasn't he, to have a really.
But in a way,
career.
because he hasn't played that much, maybe his body is only 25, even though his actual age is 29. You see what I mean?
I'd love to apply that because I didn't play any county cricket and my body's quite old. So does that mean I can take off about 40 years?
Yes, it definitely does.
Yeah,
of
great.
course
Okay,
it does.
Good, excellent. Okay, that's good news. That's good. That really lifted me up.
Have you not tried one of those machines in a gym which gives you your metabolic age or something, or your physical age or something? I've tried that. My machine says I'm about 39. I think it says I'm 39.
Does it?
Yeah, no.
Oh, right.
No. That was my sister.
Okay, right. So Brydon Carse, excellent game, very well played, a huge positive for England. Now, the other day, Yoz, you said of Jacob Bethell, ridiculous that he's batting at number 3, comes out, reels off a 50 in 37 balls to win England the game. I suppose the thing is, it's a very different kind of scenario, wasn't it? The sun was shining, the target was 100. You go in at number 3, you've got that license to play. There's not so much pressure on you. Very different, of course, if you're in at number 3, 10 past the start of a Test match, or 10 minutes into a Test match, and the ball's zipping around, or the new ball bowlers are fresh, whatever, or the opposition have scored 400, and you're coming in first wicket down after a couple of overs, and then when the pressure's on, then you've got that scoreboard pressure. So we'll see how he goes. But he's a good striker of the ball, isn't he? He's obviously a very confident young lad and a very talented young lad.
Well, I spoke this week to Dennis Amiss, the former Warwickshire and England batsman and chairman of Warwickshire as well. And I spoke to him partly because, as I mentioned on this podcast a couple of times, we're starting a new series next week about the 1974 5 Ashes. That terrifying experience if you're an English batsman facing Thompson and Lee without a helmet and with only a very sort of cheap piece of what David Lloyd called a Reader's Digest down your pants as a thigh pad. Many stories like that will emerge on our premium site, patreon.com/the Analyst 25. You can subscribe to that. I'll mention it again at the end of the show, but I got Dennis Amiss on because, of course, he played in that series, and he talked a bit about Jacob Bethell, actually, and he'd met him quite a few times and talked to him, and he just said he's a very impressive character. He's been very well sort of taught the skills of the game, but he's got some natural talent, and he's really a very inquiring character who's watched the game very carefully and absorbed a lot of information. He's a quick learner. He's got amazing talent. But what really impressed Dennis Amiss was his attitude, that he's very confident, but sort of respectful of the game and understands it, and is a very quick learner. You can sort of see that, couldn't you? I mean, I could see him. I still stick to my point from the other day, sticking him in at number 3 early in a Test match against the new ball, I think is ridiculous with his experience, lack of experience. But sending him in at number 3 today to finish the match off with 100 required, fine. And actually watching him even battling away in that first innings when England had lost an early wicket and the ball was nipping around all over the place, although he was struggling to stay in, you could almost see him learning ball by ball about what to play and what to leave and how to apply his skills to that situation. And okay, so he got a good ball in the end and he got out. But I felt actually he probably learned a lot from that experience. And part of which was I'm not overawed here. I'm actually, although I have an average of first class average of 25 and I've never played a test match before, the investment.
All scored 100.
Yeah, all scored 100. The investment, the faith shown in me by the senior players and the management has given me this confidence, which was obviously the idea, and I can cope. He put all that together to produce that innings today where, yeah, okay, so we might as well get these runs quickly and put the bowlers on the back foot, and he did it absolutely superbly. So what I'm saying is I think I still wouldn't put him in at number 3 necessarily in the first innings of a test against top class bowling, but he was perfect for this situation anyway.
I wonder what they would have done if they'd have been faced with exactly the same scenario, exactly the same time before the first Ashes test in Perth next year. Just fast forward a year. I presume, I'm just trying to think, I presume that they would have had a spare wicketkeeper with them. I presume, I don't know. So that they would have, they'd have had a few more options, or they might have had options available, in the country or whatever. I think with Ollie Robinson, wasn't one of the problems that he didn't have a passport? Didn't have a passport. Yeah.
Well, and
surely. Hold on. If you're a modern cricketer, if you're a modern aggressive cricketer, you got to have a passport. You can't play in all these leagues. I mean, you get called up for a league, some league here, there, and everywhere. You make sure your passport's ready, don't you?
Well, you would, wouldn't you? Mind you, anyway. You're talking to someone here who
you couldn't even turn up.
Well, I forgot my passport going on my honeymoon, actually. That's a story for another day. But I can't really.
How surprised am I at that? How surprised am I at that? Hold on, on a scale of 1 to 100.
I can't really criticise anyone else for not having their passport in the right state. Well, I was 35, so
right.
But the thing
there is really no hope for yours, is there? There really is.
I've got to this stage. I'm still alive,
still going,
still got a job, still got a few friends like you. You my friend?
Of course I am.
Friend, aren't you? That's good. Yeah. Well, we have that shared Christian name anyway, so I suppose that's one thing that bonds us together. So I think that with Ollie Robinson, was it a question of his passport had run out or was about to run out? Possibly. And therefore, and sometimes, you have to renew your passport every, 10 years or something? Sometimes it creeps up on you without you realising. Now, I agree with you. If you're a modern cricketer with the opportunity to play all around the world, obviously you should have your passport in date. But maybe that was just something he neglected to do.
So what would you think they would have done if it's exactly the same scenario had presented themselves before the National Series? Do you think they would have batted Bethell at 3, just on you go, and let's have a look at it? And
maybe. I mean, they like taking risks and doing outrageous things, so probably they would, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that Bethell has made a really interesting start to his international career. I mean, it's not often. Well, the best players who go on to be the very best players are often thrown in at 20, 21, aren't they? That sort of age. I go back in time. People like David Gowrie and both, and those sort of players who go on to be 100 Test match players or whatever. They are making their debuts at 21. Joe Root, for example, that sort of player.
Michael Vaughan, he went in on his Test debut, and it was England were 2 for 4 within about an over, weren't they? And he was about 23. He was a bit older. I mean, Garfield Sobers, we are obviously going back a long time here, but he played his first Test match and he batted at number 9. And then within 3 or 4 Test matches, he'd made his 365 and he was up to number 4. I still think you want to just ease people in. Throwing people in at number 3 is very tough. Having said that, Alistair Cook said on TNT Sports after one of the days playing this test that he thought that Jacob Bethell probably handled the difficulty of batting in those conditions in the first innings better than Ollie Pope might have done, because Ollie Pope's a bit more sort of frenetic and jumping around the crease, and maybe Bethell, because it was his first go and it was sort of a voyage into the unknown and he was just sort of trying to kind of get to grips with it, and he didn't look too nervous or apprehensive or flummoxed by it. And that's, again, going back to my point about attitude, that's what the England management look for.
Well, Alistair Cook, he's another one that made his debut at 21. What I'm
What
saying,
happened to him? He was flown in from
That's
the West
right.
Indies straight into opening the batting in India, in
Nagpur,
Nagpur, against Ashwin and Harbhajan Singh and all sorts. I mean, it was amazing.
Was Ashwin playing in that
No,
game?
it wasn't Ashwin. No, sorry, that was 2012.
Sorry.
It was definitely Harbhajan Singh anyway.
Yeah. So the point being that batters who make their debut at 21 are often, they often have that long international career ahead of them. And Bethell is kind of in that category, isn't it? That it may well be. When we look back, I don't know, in 7-8 years' time, we go, well, what was all the fuss about? Bethell batting at number 3, on his Test match debut, just sort of parachuted into the team. But anyway, watch this space. The other thing, of course, that comes out of the game, we talk about Bethell at 3, is Robinson will be available for the second Test match, so a proper wicket-keeper who can bat. Will England think about changing the formulation of their batting lineup? Do you think they'll just go with what they've seen? They're happy enough.
Ollie Pope kept well. He looked fine at number 6, didn't he? He batted well. He played really well lower down the order. Looked much more comfortable there. But actually, I thought he kept well as well. So they won't change it, will they? They'll have Ollie Robinson there as obviously in emergencies, as someone in case Pope injures his finger or something. But I would have thought they'll stick with the same team pretty much if they can.
Or the same configuration of the team. I don't know. It's possible they might have to, mix and match the pace bowlers a little bit. They've got Ollie Stone and they've got Matthew Potts, haven't they, in reserve? And sometimes they just like to take one out and put one in just to, even out the workload. I mean, there is one issue here that, it's sort of been brushed away, hasn't it? That Ben Stokes had some kind of reaction as he was bowling what turned out to be his final over today. He was halfway through his 5th over of a spell. He opened the bowling today. I think that quite surprised me. He'd hardly bowled, hadn't bowled in the innings or the match very much. Opened the bowling today. Midway through his 5th over, just sort of pulled up. And you thought, hamstring again, because they're horrible injuries, hamstrings. You think you're fine, then they come back. You can just feel it. You can feel the soreness in your hamstring. But he didn't go off. He stayed on the field, and afterwards he said, "Oh no, it was a back issue. I just felt something in my back go, so I didn't want to risk it." And he said, I'd done it when I was diving in the field, or worse to that effect. And I thought, that's a bit odd, because if you have done it, if you just sort of caused yourself a back problem fielding, and you didn't need to bowl, and he didn't need to bowl today, did he? Then kind of why was he bowling? So I don't know. For me, not everything seemed to add up. But we'll see how that plays out over the next few days. A, whether he's fit to play, and B, how much he's able to bowl in the next Test match. Because you want a fully fit Ben Stokes. So how much do you risk him? But also, to have the balance of a team for a particular Test match, you need to have that. Probably you need to have that fourth seamer, don't you? Bowling his share of overs, especially if the conditions, Wellington on the first morning are seamer friendly. You want that. You want to be able to keep that pressure on with the four seamers. It's kind of like watch this space, see what happens. Really, A, does he play? Sounds like he will. And B, how much does he bowl, or does he bowl at all? What do you think?
Well, I think he's got to play, and I think he's got to play because he just has so much influence on the game. So if he can possibly bowl any overs,
if you've got a slight injury, and you've had a hamstring, is it worth risking? The thing is like the back is linked to the hamstring, isn't it?
I think we're speculating, aren't we? I think if he's
probably,
80% fit, I'd have him on the field, because I just think he has such an impact on the game by being there, his presence, his mind working all the time. It reminds me, seeing him on the field, of playing with Mike Brearley. And I know we're talking again a long time ago, but by the way, Stokes has just overtaken, for the moment anyway, Brearley's percentage record. Stokes has won 18 tests in 30 matches. Brearley won 18 in 31. So, Stokes has just marginally edged ahead of Brearley's sort of percentage win ratio. But Brearley had this presence on the field, which not only lifted his own team, because we knew that he understood players and could read them and read the game, but also we knew that the opposition knew that. We knew that they knew, and that had an impact on them. And many players talked to me afterwards about feeling sort of oppressed by Brearley's presence on the field and feeling that they were always one step ahead, he was one step ahead of them. And that gives your team confidence and the opposition, sort of apprehension. So, and I'm sure Stokes has that similar effect. He's just got so many kind of ideas, and he's got such a perception about opponents and situations, and B, so much empathy with his own players. That combination is unique in terms of, I mean, Michael Vaughan had it probably as well, I'd say, of England captains of the last 20 years. But Stokes is exceptional from that point of view. And, you know, you want to get him on the field 3/4 fit without any doubt.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. I don't
Okay.
think you want to get him on the field 3/4 fit. I think you don't want to have him on the field 3/4 fit. I think you've got to be close to being fully fit because he is so important to the England side. I mean, I agree with all those things you just said. I mean, yeah, I mean on the field when he's fit and his brain's ticking and everything like that. Yeah, I mean it's an incredible combination and intimidating, definitely. But how much do you risk or push that fitness issue? I suppose you look at the future, and there are 2 Test matches left, and there's a long break, isn't there, before England play again? So if he were to break down, then there's actually a long time to get fit before the really significant cricket happens, i.e. the Test matches next summer, and then obviously into the Ashes next winter.
I mean, the problem with anybody over the age of 32, Stokes is 33, is if you are a bowler who puts a lot of effort into bowling, which he obviously does, things just do start hurting. And often you don't know how serious they are. So we are speculating. We don't know. He hasn't had the scans and stuff. But
Well, that's the thing. They do have scans these days. In your day, you probably didn't as much, did you?
no, so you just, you know, you had to kind of almost, it was trial and error. You know, you turn up on an average day and like your thigh hurt, your knee hurt, your ankle or something. It's what I was saying at the beginning, actually, that knowing your body and knowing what injuries you've got and how to manage them is a really key part of being a fast bowler. And over time, you do understand that, you know, the certain injuries are things that will get better or won't get worse, let's say. And others, you think, actually, no, that's quite serious. I need to stop. And I think Stokes at the moment is in that, he's got that injury where he wasn't quite sure. Probably by stopping and having a bit of treatment on it, it might recover. But certainly over the mid-30s, things do start to hurt more. And sometimes you just have to deal with it. But it's the nature of getting old as a sportsman. And I know that 35 or 34 isn't old, but it is if you're putting that much amount of stress through your body bowling 85 miles an hour.
Demanding role, isn't it? Being the all-rounder, it really is, and being the captain as well. I mean, he's such an important player to England, and you know, everyone knows. And you have that feeling, instinctive feeling that he absolutely has to be as fit as he possibly can by the time England go to the Ashes next winter, don't you? And and that's the hope. But that he, from an England perspective, that he A is pretty much 100% fit, and B can stay 100% fit throughout the series, and that gives England clearly their best chance. I think it's that, isn't it? When you saw him pull up during the 100, you thought, I'm sure a lot of England fans thought, oh no, and I'm sure that people who were following the match last night saw it happen, thought, this is so unfortunate, but actually it didn't seem quite as bad as it hasn't turned out quite as bad as it seems. But you've obviously got to be careful. Anyway, you're right. We are speculating a bit, but we'll see how that plays out.
So
Right,
we'll just take a quick break, actually,
Yeah.
and we'll come back and we'll talk about what that result, England's result, means for both England and New Zealand in terms of the World Test Championship and other issues. And just another mention of our premium site, which, as I say, will next week have the first episode of what I suppose you might call, I mean, you were scathing about the title of this series, 74.5, calling it Headline.
No, it's a good title. No, it's a good title.
I'm not sure it's a good title. I mean, it's Bodyline 2, basically. 74.5 Ashes.
Bodyline 2, brackets headline. That'll do.
Brackets headline. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, that'll be on our premium site next week. Also, you can get an ad-free version of this podcast in advance of it being released to the general public. So go to patreon.com/theanalyst25. It's £3 a month. I have to tell you that, of course. Terms and conditions apply and all that. But it is less than a cup of tea in McDonald's. So it's not that much, really. And we'll be back after this short break.
Okay, World Test Championship chat in just a moment. See where it puts New Zealand, where it puts the other teams in contention for the final. England, we know, are out of it because of their percentages. One person we haven't talked about. There's always someone struggling, isn't there? Inevitably in any cricket team, it looks as if there's someone struggling. All the players have done well. Bethell's done well in the game. Chris Wokes did well in the game. Harry Brook, Ollie Pope, battling his demons. He gets some runs. Ben Stokes comes back with some runs. Brydon Carse has a fine test match.
Played all right. We haven't talked about him. We'll talk about him in a minute, actually, as well.
Yeah, Duckett first and second innings, some cameos from him. Yeah, most players had a good game, didn't they? Zak Crawley, though, 0-1. And it's bizarre, isn't it, actually? I mean, he has scored runs, and he's got a fantastic Ashes 100, but against New Zealand, he cannot score a run against New Zealand, can he? So in 17 innings against New Zealand, he scored 168 runs at 9.88. And I think Jimmy Anderson's got a higher Test match batting average against New Zealand than Zak Crawley. What is it about Zak Crawley and New Zealand that just doesn't work or hasn't worked so far?
In fact, his average in New Zealand is even lower. It's 8, I think, and there's a clue there. I don't think he likes that, and we've seen it before. He doesn't like those sort of little nagging medium pacers who just hover the ball outside off stump and get a bit of movement away, and that's how he certainly got out in the first innings. He doesn't like that sort of nagging 80-mile-an-hour line and length just hovering around the off stump. And you become, I think, as a player, these facts, you try and avoid them. You try and avoid these stats, but they keep being reminded. You keep being reminded of them by somebody like us. And it gets in your head, and it becomes sort of almost a bit like New Zealand is your bogey team. But I think it's partly because the pitch is just offer that little bit with the new ball, and they're very good, those sort of medium pace-ish bowlers. And I'm saying, the Southies and the Matt Henrys, they're just very good with the new ball at just giving a batter like Crawley, who likes to go at the ball hard and go for a big drive early on outside off stump. They're very good at exploiting a player like that. He's got to adapt his game slightly, I think, maybe he needs to leave the ball better or something. I don't know. But it's hard to kind of almost extricate yourself from these horrible statistical nightmares.
Yeah, he didn't get a huge amount of runs in Pakistan either, so he's on a lean spell. I mean, there seems to be quite a lot of lean spells, but what they like about him, of course, is that he is capable of playing that exhilarating, potentially match-changing innings. That 189 at Manchester last year, 2003, is the outlier, isn't it? An incredible day of batting from England. He did make 78 against Pakistan in Multan. Actually, he really looked as good as you'd ever see him, actually, Zak Crawley, in that innings, and then he got himself out, and that was the match in which England made 800. But after that, last 6 innings, no scores above 30, and 2-0-1 in his last 3 Test match innings. But I can't see them going elsewhere away from Zak Crawley, can you? I mean, do you think they would have done already now? I mean, he's played 51 Test matches. The average is 31. Surely, I mean, he'd have to have, a terrible time in the rest of the series, and then a terrible time against India, wouldn't he? And get no runs whatsoever for that to happen.
Yes, and I think they like the combination of Crawley and Duckett, and I think they do work well together. They've had a lot of 50 partnerships, haven't they, and 100 partnerships over the last 2 years. And the combination of Crawley, big front foot driver, and also very good with the pull, right-handed, and then the diminutive Duckett cutting and pulling and sweeping bowlers to distraction. That's a lovely combination. A real little and large kind of idea. Very hard for bowlers to bowl at. Crawley just struggles with it when there's a bit of nibble around, doesn't he? But England will overcome that, or kind of put that out of their head. And Crawley does contribute so much in other ways. He takes sharp catches. He's so committed in the field, isn't he? Diving and flicking the ball back. And I know you say, well, you wouldn't pick a guy for England just because he runs after the ball and flicks it back from the boundary. But I think they like his wholesome approach to cricket, and the fact that he doesn't look as if he gets too sort of cut up about failure. He sort of takes it in his stride, and he's been encouraged to play his game irrespective of feast or famine.
I think those people sort of calling for the end for Zak Crawley after a few more low scores, I just don't think it's going to happen. It would have to be another lot of low scores, wouldn't it? A run of low scores, a really sort of serious really serious run of low scores where his confidence was shot or something like that. Of course, he did miss some Test cricket last summer, didn't he, because of that finger injury, so there's that aspect to it as well. How much cricket has he played relatively recently? Let's move on to the World Test Championship, Jons.
Well, just before we do, I just want to say one thing about Duckett. There was a shot he played today I mean, I thought he played well in that first innings until he got a bit carried away. He got 40 odd, and he played well, and he sort of left a few, didn't he? So he played a bit more selectively. But today he hit a shot to get off the mark where he ran across virtually outside the return crease, outside off stump, and ramped this ball over the keeper's head, which was practically a wide. I don't know what you call that. So I was trying to work out, is it the sort of the sidestep scoop or something, or the shuffle scoop? Because he ended up completely off the cut strip when he played that. Amazing. Against the new ball. Extraordinary.
I suppose you have that license, don't you, when you're chasing 100 and the pitch is pretty flat. The shuffle scoop. Yeah, I like that. That'll do. New term. And actually, I find sometimes when you're commentating, you do need new terms to describe some of the shots that the England batters are playing. I mean, Jacob Bethell, took Smith down, didn't he? Just crunching him.
He did, actually.
Boundary after boundary.
He did. And I think he bore out what I said the other day about Smith, that the trouble is, he's a keen, enthusiastic, bustling sort of bowler, but he's quite short of stature. And, on a flattish pitch, bit short of a length, a player like Bethell, who's looking to get on the back foot and play the pull shot, it's very hard to contain for a bowler like Smith. And actually, the shots that Bethell played, those pull shots, just a little bit reminded me of Andrew Strauss. He's a more flashy, dynamic version of Strauss, because Strauss would get back and really pull those balls that weren't that short through and over mid-wicket. There's a lovely flourish to the way he plays those shots. So, credit to England for giving him a chance, which I wouldn't have. So, congratulations to them, and thank God I'm not a selector.
Well, that's why you're sitting here talking to me, Yoz, isn't it? And why you're perhaps not in New Zealand, possibly. Right. Can we talk about the World Test Championship now?
Thanks for that.
No, it's nice that you're talking to me. I think it's absolutely nice to me. But well, let's move on. I think enough said about that, the better. Right, World Test Championship. New Zealand dropping a game. We reckon they can still qualify. Now, it is quite complicated. It is quite.
You didn't like Ben Stokes' remarks about the World Test Championship, did you?
Well, I just thought they were odd, really. Let me just one particular quote. He says, "I can't remember if I've ever given any real time to be specifically thinking about the World Test Championship, to be honest, because it's utterly confusing." Well, I mean, the point system is quite confusing, but I mean, there are two sort of fundamental ways of being quite successful in the World Test Championship, and that's to win your matches and not bowl your overs too slowly. Keep your over rate up. England lost 19 points to their over rate, and it's an ICC event, and that's a prestigious final. It's a Lord's final, and surely it's something to really take seriously. I don't know, just whether his idea was that it's really confusing. I can't work it out, the point system, or whether I can't believe they're sort of not taking the World Test Championship seriously. Surely they are. Surely they have to. You have to be aiming to get to the final. I mean, he didn't say that specifically. He didn't say we're not looking. We're not that interested in it. It's a nonsense competition. I mean, most other teams seem to be taking it seriously, don't they? I mean, they seem they're really keen on getting to the final. Australia and India battling for it. South Africa battling for it, and they actually now look reasonably on course to make it if they can just keep stringing some results together at home. They took down Sri Lanka, actually hammered them in their recent game, so they've taken another stride forward, so they're now second in the table. New Zealand today, I don't quite know what's happening, but one thing I noticed is that New Zealand were really rattling through their overs in the second innings. Whether they were a bit behind on their over rate and thought they might lose a point, of course they were the first winners of the World Test Championship, I'm not sure, but there was a really short drinks break and they just got on with it. Maybe just they were kind of accepting their fate. But it looked to me as though they were trying to get through their overs with thinking we don't want a points deduction because we're still in contention. We worked it out, we reckon that if they won the last two test matches, they could get to 57.14%. And we don't know whether that's good enough because it depends on all the other results. And it is quite complicated. But win your games, bowl your overs quickly, keep yourself in contention to get to Lords and final.
No, that's absolutely right. And actually, looking at the comments under Stokes' remarks, looking at the comments on, I think, the Times, most of the fairly kind of cynical observers were saying, just win your games, mate. Forget about how complicated it is. It's not complicated, is it? Just win games. I mean, when you look at the table and all those numbers.
Well, no, Yoz. You have to bowl your overs as well, because that's what punishes you. So you have to be aware of that. It is part of the package.
That's why I thought it was bizarre when England picked Josh Hull, actually, because he runs from the boundary, and I just couldn't see him being able to help England's over rate. Anyway, I mean that's a side issue, but I think that I suppose I sort of sympathise in a way because superficially, when you look at the World Test Championship, championship table and all those numbers, it does look like a page of logarithms. Logarithms. Did you ever have logarithms at school?
Yeah,
I mean, I did. I mean,
yeah.
I know modern people would say, well, what the hell are they? They were just pages of numbers which you were sort of tried to understand and use to make calculations. But it does look a bit like a page of logarithms, the World Test Championship. But actually, if you look at it very simply, the percentage at the end is just the percentage of points which you could have won, which you have won. So it's 12 points for a win, and you times that by the number of games the team has played. So if you've played 10 games, the maximum points you could achieve is 120. And if you've won 6 games, 6 12 is 72, so it's 72 divided by 120. And that's a fairly simple equation which you can do on your iPhone. So it isn't that complicated, really. And then obviously there are the complicating factor is that you then lose points for your over rates. So maybe that's where England are being confused. But in the end, you've got to win games. And maybe the England team are too well paid, so therefore they don't care about the win money to win the World Test Championship.
I'm going to push back on that. It may be that we just got to a situation with England where, okay, they had 2 tough opponents, then they had the Ashes. I mean, it depends who you play. So they had Australia at home and India away as part of their 6-match series. 6 series of matches, I should say, and those were difficult games. They got hammered in India, so that really made it difficult for them. They didn't bother overs very quickly in the Ashes because they were really focusing on that and trying to win the games, taking their time. And by the time that happened, it had kind of gone for them, hadn't it? It drifted past, and so you just then, well, okay, we'll just play our Test cricket and keep entertaining the crowds and see what happens. And it's gone by then. So you make a comment about it's all a bit confusing. But surely I would have thought each round you set out your stall, right, let's qualify for the final. That's what it's all about, or one of the things it's all about, and make it happen. And you're thinking England are talented enough to do that, aren't they? They're talented enough to be in contention.
Yeah. Do you think it's sort of contrary to a modern player's philosophy, which is, the old cliche about take it one day at a time, take it one game at a time, and therefore you don't want to be looking too far ahead? Can we qualify for the World Test Championship final? How many games do we need to win? The coaches will say. I heard Luke Ronchi, actually, the New Zealand batting coach, giving an interview after one of the days of this last test, and it was just gobbledygook, talking about process and preparation and mindsets and stuff. It sounded really kind of like he'd swallowed a sort of psychology book or something. But
what does this actually mean in practice, you mean? What does this really mean?
Yeah, what does it exactly? It was all sort of theoretical stuff. But the modern coaching adage is, control the controllables and all that. And part of that is one day at a time, one over at a time, one ball at a time. So looking ahead to June next year is almost what they preach against.
I mean, so how do you sort of square that with football leagues where teams are taking one match at a time, or one half at a time, or one incident at a time, but ultimately their goal is to get promotion or avoid relegation or win championships or qualify for Europe or whatever? There's always a short-term goal.
Bristol City. How do Bristol City approach their season, do you reckon?
Well, they try to win every game, Yoz. Yeah.
Why don't they then?
Well, because there's someone trying to stop you. You know what it's like, Yoz. You're bowling, there's a batter trying to stop you. In fact, there's not a batter trying to stop you. There's a batter trying to whack you over old Father Time at Lords. That's what they're trying to do with you.
Oh, at least I didn't manage that. At least I didn't suffer that ignominy. God, imagine that. Imagine a bowler bowling a short ball at Lords and getting hit over Father Time. Liam Livingstone actually managed that in a 100 match. I think it was the 100 final, actually. He hit a 6 But yeah, it's a hell of a hit. That we're going off the subject here. Well, all I can say is we're back where we started. Hitting Santa for 6. So what's going to happen next? We've got England to look forward to for the second Test match, which starts on Thursday in Wellington, the 5th of December, and obviously the next day is India v Australia in Adelaide. So 2 big games to come.
Yeah, well, we're in December. All our Christmases are coming together, aren't they? With those 2 fixtures, so much cricket to look forward to. Actually, better than Christmas itself, isn't it? Those 2 Test matches being played at the same time.
You love Christmas, don't you? You absolutely love it. I know you wish it was abolished, don't you?
Not abolish, Yoz. Just every 4 years. Every 4 years, like the Olympics or the European Championship or the World Cup. That would be better. Everything would be a bit more perspective. No, it's fine. It's fine. But it's a cricket Christmas this week, isn't it? I think. And so much to look forward to. And other Test cricket going on around the world as well. South Africa looking to make progress in their bid for a place in the World Test Championship final. So I think we will be back, won't we, on Friday morning to review the first day of the Wellington Test match.
Yeah, we will. But before that, look out for the first episode of, what are we calling it? Headline Bodyline 2 or something. Anyway, looking back at the 74.5 Ashes series, it's going to be on our premium site by Wednesday. Look out for it at patreon.com/theanalyst25.
Thanks for listening. Speak to you later in the week. Goodbye for now.
Start